Immanuel Kant, a giant of modern philosophy.
Hey guys, welcome to the Academy for Modern Stoic. In today's video, we will explore the life and work of Immanuel Kant, one of the giants of modern philosophy, and how his ideas present surprising convergences with the principles of Stoicism. Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804, is widely considered one of the most influential thinkers in Western philosophy. His work revolutionized several areas of knowledge, including epistemology, ethics, and metaphysics. Among his most significant contributions are the works Critique of Pure Reason and Critique of Practical Reason.
Critique of Pure Reason, 1781.
In this monumental work, Kant investigates the limits and capacity of human reason to know the world. He proposes the distinction between phenomena, the world as we perceive it, and noumena, reality itself, establishing a new basis for epistemology.
Critique of Practical Reason, 1788.
Here, Kant addresses ethical and moral issues, developing the concept of the categorical imperative, which proposes that we should only act according to maxims that we may want to become universal laws. This work is fundamental for understanding Kantian morality.
Introduction to Stoicism.
Before we dive into the connections between Kant and Stoicism, let's briefly understand what this ancient philosophy is. Stoicism, founded by Zeno of Citium in the early 3rd century BC, emphasizes the importance of reason, virtue, and self-control. Two of the best-known Stoics are Seneca and Marcus Aurelius. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic writers, Seneca advised moderation and self-control. He stated, "The greatest blessing for the soul is not to be shaken by passions." And Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who wrote Meditations, a series of reflections on how to live a virtuous life. He declared, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." In this video, we will show how Immanuel Kant's philosophy presents several convergences with the principles of Stoicism. Although Kant was not explicitly a Stoic, many of his ideas about ethics, reason, and morality resonate deeply with Stoic ideals. We will explore these connections through three main themes. 1. The categorical imperative and moral duty. How Kantian ethics and moral duty align with Stoic ideals of rational and universal action. 2. The autonomy of the will and moral freedom. The similarity between the autonomy of the will in Kant and Stoic self-determination. 3. Practical reason and the search for happiness. The convergence between Kantian practical reason and Stoic wisdom in the search for happiness and inner tranquility. Join us on this philosophical journey to discover how Kant's ideas can enrich our understanding of Stoicism and guide us towards a more ethical and virtuous life.
The categorical imperative and moral duty.
Let's start by exploring one of the central concepts of Kantian ethics, the categorical imperative. The categorical imperative, central concept of Kantian ethics. Immanuel Kant developed the categorical imperative as the fundamental principle of morality. He proposed that we should act in accordance with maxims that can be universalized, that is, that could be adopted by everyone without contradiction. There are three main formulations of the categorical imperative, but the best known is, act only according to a maxim such that you can at the same time will it to become a universal law. Universality and rationality of the categorical imperative. The strength of the categorical imperative lies in its universality and rationality. Kant believed that morality must be objective and independent of individual emotions or circumstances. In contrast to moral relativism, which suggests that right and wrong depend on the specific culture or situation, the categorical imperative establishes a universal ethics based on pure reason. Comparison with the Stoic ideal of duty. This approach to Kant has a strong resonance with the Stoic ideal of duty. Stoics, such as Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, also emphasized the importance of acting in accordance with reason and universal principles. Seneca wrote, "Live according to nature. This implies following reason and universal order. For the Stoics, virtue consists of living in harmony with reason, which is essential human nature. Just like the Kantian categorical imperative, the Stoics believe that we must act in accordance with rational and universal principles, always seeking the common good. Marco Aurelio, in his Meditations, highlighted, "What is not good for the swarm is also not good for the bee."
Application of the categorical imperative in ethical dilemmas.
Kant applied the categorical imperative to several ethical dilemmas, showing its coherence with Stoic principles. Let's consider some examples. 1. The lie. Kant argued that lying is always morally wrong because, if lying were universalized, trust would be destroyed and human communication would become impossible. This view is consistent with Stoicism, which values honesty and integrity as pillars of virtue. 2. Suicide. Kant believed that suicide is immoral because it goes against the duty to preserve one's life, which is essential to fulfilling any other moral duty. The Stoics, although they recognized suicide in certain extreme contexts, generally advocated resistance and fortitude in the face of difficulties, aligning themselves with the Kantian vision of respect for life. 3. Charity. Kant saw charity not just as a moral option, but as a duty. Helping others, especially those in need, is an application of the categorical imperative because it promotes the common good. This reflects the Stoic ethic of benevolence and duty towards others. Autonomy of the will and moral freedom. Let us now explore the relationship between the autonomy of the will and moral freedom in the philosophy of Immanuel Kant and its connection with Stoic principles. Autonomy of the will in Kant. The autonomy of the will is a central concept in Kant's moral philosophy. For him, autonomy means that the will is free to legislate itself, that is, to act in accordance with the moral law itself that reason recognizes as valid. This ability to self-legislate is what makes us morally responsible. In his words, the will is such a principle of itself that it must be considered absolutely autonomous. Comparison with Stoic freedom. This Kantian idea has a strong resonance with the freedom defended by the Stoics. For the Stoics, true freedom is inner freedom, which comes from self-determination and the ability to live according to reason. Epictetus, for example, emphasized that we are free to the extent that we control our own actions and reactions, regardless of external circumstances. He said, "It's not things that disturb us, but the opinion we have about them." Autonomy of will and categorical imperative. Kant's autonomy of the will and moral freedom are intrinsically linked to the categorical imperative. Because we are autonomous, we are able to act according to rational and universal principles that we freely choose. The categorical imperative guides us to act in such a way that our maxim could become a universal law, which is only possible through a will that is morally free and autonomous. Examples of defending individual freedom and resistance to oppression. Kant defends individual freedom and resistance to oppression in several of his works. He believed that each person should be treated as an end in themselves, and not as a means to the ends of others. This idea is reflected in his famous formulation of the categorical imperative. Act in such a way that you use humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, always and simultaneously as an end and never simply as a means. Let's consider some examples. 1. Resistance to oppression. Kant argued that it is our moral duty to resist any form of tyranny that denies human dignity and autonomy. This principle is consistent with the Stoic view that we must maintain our moral integrity and resist corruption and oppression, even under threat. Seneca, for example, wrote, "It is the mark of a vulgar mind to allow one's thoughts to follow the norms and standards of the majority." 2. Individual freedom. Kant believed in the importance of freedom of expression and personal autonomy. He argued that each individual should have the freedom to seek the truth and live according to their rational convictions. This view is similar to that of the Stoics, who valued inner freedom and self-determination as paths to virtue and wisdom. 3. Moral responsibility. Kant maintained that we are responsible for our actions to the extent that we are autonomous and act in accordance with reason. Likewise, the Stoics emphasized personal responsibility, arguing that we must take control of our reactions and decisions, maintaining our inner tranquility in the face of adversity.
Practical reason and the pursuit of happiness.
Let us now analyze how Immanuel Kant conceives of practical reason and the search for happiness, and how these ideas connect with the principles of Stoicism. Concept of practical reason in Kant. For Kant, practical reason is the ability of reason to guide us in our moral actions, allowing us to act in accordance with duty. Practical reason guides us in the search for good and true happiness, which Kant sees as a state of inner satisfaction that arises when we live in accordance with rational and moral principles. Kant states, "Pure practical reason must determine the will." Comparison with Stoic wisdom. Stoic wisdom, similarly, proposes the use of reason as a means to achieve inner tranquility and a good life. Stoics believe that true happiness, eudaimonia, comes from living in harmony with nature and reason. Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic emperor, wrote, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." Both philosophies agree that reason is essential to guide our actions and achieve a state of genuine well-being. They reject the blind pursuit of ephemeral pleasures, promoting happiness that is stable and lasting. Happiness in Kant, inner satisfaction and duty. Kant defines happiness not as the pursuit of fleeting pleasures, but as a state of inner satisfaction that arises when we act in accordance with duty and rational principles. He distinguishes between apparent happiness, which is fleeting and based on external desires, and true happiness, which is achieved through morality and virtue. Kant declares, "True happiness is satisfaction with one's moral existence."
Criticism of the blind search for happiness.
Kant criticizes the blind pursuit of external happiness, arguing that it leads to an unsatisfactory and disordered life. He believes that the search for ephemeral pleasures results in an endless cycle of desires and frustrations, while the search for happiness through the fulfillment of moral duty results in deep and lasting satisfaction. This Kantian view is consistent with Stoic principles. Seneca, for example, warned against the unbridled pursuit of pleasure. "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." He emphasized that true happiness comes from virtue and moderation. Examples from Kant's critique. 1. Materialism and ephemeral pleasures. Kant criticized materialism and the unbridled search for material goods and physical pleasures. He argued that such searches lead to an existential void, as they are based on external and fickle desires. This criticism parallels the Stoic view that we should be indifferent to external things and focus on inner virtue. 2. Duty and inner satisfaction. Kant proposed that true happiness comes from fulfilling our moral duty. When we act in accordance with the categorical imperative and live virtuously, we experience an inner satisfaction that is stable and lasting. This concept aligns with the Stoic view that true happiness comes from conformity to reason and nature. 3. Resilience and adversity. Both Kant and the Stoics defend resilience in the face of adversity. Kant believed that acting morally and rationally helps us face difficulties with dignity and courage, similar to the Stoic idea that we should accept what we cannot control and focus on our reaction to those events. Throughout this video, we explore several convergences between the philosophy of Immanuel Kant and the principles of Stoicism. We have seen how both philosophical traditions share fundamental values, such as the importance of reason, morality based on universal principles, and the pursuit of a virtuous life. The categorical imperative and moral duty. Kant's categorical imperative teaches us to act in accordance with rational and universal principles, much like the Stoic ideal of moral duty. Both emphasize the need to live according to reason, overcoming uncontrolled emotions, and moral relativism, autonomy of the will, and moral freedom. The Kantian idea of autonomy of the will leads us to act in accordance with our own moral law, without being subject to desires or external authorities. This aligns with Stoic freedom, which advocates individual self-determination and personal responsibility, practical reason, and the search for happiness. Kant's practical reason guides us in the search for true happiness, which is a state of inner satisfaction resulting from living in accordance with duty and rational principles. Similarly, Stoics use reason to achieve inner tranquility and the good life, rejecting the blind pursuit of ephemeral pleasures.
Importance of Kant's work for ethics and modern philosophy.
Immanuel Kant is a central figure in modern philosophy, and his work continues to be a rich source of insights into ethics and morality. His emphasis on reason, autonomy, and the universality of moral principles has a lasting impact on the way we understand ethics today. Kantian philosophy offers us a solid foundation for approaching ethical dilemmas and for living in a virtuous and morally coherent way. Likewise, Stoicism teaches us to cultivate resilience, wisdom, and inner tranquility in the face of life's adversities. Thank you for watching this video from the Academy for Modern Stoic. We hope you found value in the analyses presented and that you are inspired to further explore the works of Immanuel Kant and the principles of Stoicism. If you are interested in philosophy, ethics, and personal development, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring and informative content about ancient wisdom and its application in modern life. To the next.